My name's Veronica Bratcher. I'm a licensed clinical therapist and director of clinical services at Wildflower Mountain Ranch.
I'm Debbie Heisler, and I'm a certified grief coach in Southern Utah.
And I am Lacey, and I am a certified neuro coach and a youth mentor at Wildflower Mountain Ranch. And today we're just going to kind of discuss a little bit about what ODD is and kind of different ways to work with it. So Veronica, you want to kind of explain that a little bit for us?
So one of the ways in describing ODD stands for oppositional defiant disorder. This is the case where it's a minor, it's a child, so it's a person under the age of 18 who has more than average or more than normal for their age. They are just defiant. Typically, it is specifically against people in authority, like their parents or their teachers, or it could be authority figures in the community. One of the things that is helpful, especially for parents who are in this world, to separate. I'm glad you're editing because I'm great at this when I don't think about this in advance. One of the things that's really helpful with oppositional defiant disorder is to separate what it is not. So oppositional defiant disorder is different than the other diagnosis of conduct disorder. Conduct disorder happens more often when kids are frequently breaking the law, where you're to the point where you've got a lot of legal infractions going on. So that's like the second level of oppositional defiant disorder. But oppositional defiant disorder is different from traditional parenting or childhood behaviors because this is persistent enough that the youth isn't responding to traditional or even positive behavior parenting techniques. Often there are issues related to attachment and sometimes mental health disorders as well. But even when it is logically and reasonably, and even in the youth's best interest to cooperate, they say no and do the opposite, regardless, just because the authority figure has told them to do so, has said, you need to do this. And they're like, no, I'm not going to do it. And often it's more than just a no. There can be some serious behaviors involved, such as fighting, running away, other things that can put the youth and the parent-child relationship in jeopardy.
Okay. And in some of my studies, they say that it starts with ADHD. What do you think about that? ADHD, with it starting with ADHD and then turning into something else?
There have actually been a variety of different theories about what causes oppositional defiant disorder. Mm-hmm. There are some people that used to believe infants, specifically infants exposed to substances, were more likely to have oppositional defiant disorder. And the reason for that is that the stimulation in utero of their neurons did not help them be receptive to that natural bonding relationship in childhood, which is, let's be honest, as kids, one of the bigger reasons why they listen to us as parents is the first, they have the false belief that we have way more power than we do. And second, that the relationship is important enough for them to want to do something that they might not really want to do. And so there is the element on one hand that it can be associated with in utero substance exposure, but there are some other statements just like that talk about ADHD when the issue may come with, is there a skill missing of, is it talking about impulsivity? Are we worried again about delayed gratification? I think medically, they're not really sure what all the pieces are that go into oppositional defiant disorder. And so sometimes it's kind of a catch-all for this kid is not listening to anybody and it's causing distress and it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Perfect. We're just going to jump in.
It's interesting to hear all of the, what it really is. It's experiencing it is a whole nother level of that.
Yes. So how, and in your expertise, Veronica, how would you say that parents can kind of work with this and help their child along and through it if they're experiencing it?
So my first suggestion for parents would actually be like layers and layers and layers of making sure that you are okay as a parent, because dealing with a kid who's struggling with oppositional defiant disorder will stress you to the absolute max, and you will do and have the potential to do things as a parent you never thought you would do. You'll lose your cool, you'll be super frustrated, you will say things you don't mean, you will become your own worst version of Miss Hannigan, because having a kid who struggles with oppositional defiant disorder is really challenging. So the first thing I would recommend for parents is figure out, what do I need to do to be okay? Because the worst thing we can do as parents with kids with oppositional defiant disorder is be incredibly emotionally dysregulated. And we then come off as the unkind, uncaring grizzly bear, or the super passive, I can't say anything because I might set him off parent, because both of those will continue that behavior to not great places. And so my first step would actually be, make sure you're taking care of yourself, and to be able to separate, hey, this is something my kid is struggling with. Here's how I'd like to be able to respond, and here's what I need to do in order to be able to respond that way. Because the first step isn't about changing the kid's behavior, it's about remaining regulated.
Yes. And can we talk or just mention a little bit about the different parenting styles, like authoritative, authoritarian, indulgent, and neglective? My thoughts were that if we have a mixture of an authoritarian parent and an indulgent parent, the authoritarian parent is like, I'm strict, 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 punish, punish, punish. And then the indulgent parent is the one that's like, I love you, I'll make some rules, but I won't follow them. So do you think if we have two parenting styles, that's the indulgent love, 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 and not follow through, and then the very strict, strict authoritarian parent, would that sometimes cause a child to be experiencing ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, in your kind of opinion? I don't know.
I don't know that it could cause oppositional defiant disorder, because kids are incredibly resilient in a variety of different ways, and they learn how to read a room, and they can figure out, how do I get the most from this one without upsetting this one, and they can utilize the situation. I can say that those situations would make an oppositional defiant disorder child act in more extremes and likely cause significant distress within the relationship. So I wouldn't say the parenting style necessarily caused the oppositional defiant disorder, because there's too many pieces to consider, but I would say it would not help it.
So maybe parents who are experiencing children with oppositional defiance disorder should probably look at their parenting styles and kind of make adjustments there.
The most common element in working with kids with attachment with oppositional defiant disorder is figuring out consistency. Because we as human beings will continue to do whatever we want to do for as long as we can get away with it, and as long as it seems to work for us. And so it works. I mean, back in the 80s, and you talk about the Ferber method of the babies need to just cry it out. And the idea was, you'd have individuals who inherently knew, wait a second, maybe this isn't a great cause, who after 5 minutes would go in and pick up the baby and reassure them. Well, what that has reinforced inside the body is that I just need to cry for 5 minutes. And I need to now cry for 10 minutes, and then I know they will come. Well, when we apply that same behavior modification technique to oppositional defiant disorder, it is the element of, if we're inconsistent in our parenting elements, what we've then taught that kid is, I just need to be this much more rude, or this much more aggressive, or break this rule one more time, because if I wear my parents down, and that really is the case, because sometimes as parents, we have all thrown in the hat and said, that's it, I don't care what it is that you want, but I am too tired to fight with you or have this challenge with you. It inherently teaches them that if I'm obnoxious enough, or I do enough of this long enough, then you will change your mind, and you will change the rule or the boundary. And that is what can get us into a deep hole. Or the same elements happen is, sometimes we have parents who have been so overwhelmed by our ODD kiddo that they swing the other way, and they are so strict and so authoritarian that there is no way for the kid to win. Even if they do well, it's like, nope, you did this last week, you're never going to be able to do this again. And so then the child has no purpose or investment for it's like, I'm going to be punished forever. So why would I change behavior, which is really hard for me?
So a really good mix of all of those styles is super important.
Yeah, the authoritative parent is the one that has the love and the compassion, but also the rules and the consistency, right?
Absolutely. It's the one where the relationship is key. And
Yeah.
especially in the parent-child dynamics and in a lot of our human dynamics, the relationship matters. We need to have investment. We need to have connection. We need to have reinforcement. And in order for that to do well, we need to have boundaries. Even if in our healthiest relationships, we have boundaries. We just may not say them out loud because we may have the same boundary, and therefore we don't think about it because we both do it automatically. But there are boundaries in all relationships. Some just may need to be a little bit more explicit or overt or shared than we might otherwise imagine.
Well, I was going to say that I found in our situation that writing those boundaries down and having everybody be a part of that was super important to getting through a lot of those moments because we had many with the trauma that my daughter had. So
Yeah.
it was probably pivotal in our relationship.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, Veronica, for going over oppositional defiance disorder with us. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.